afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Fanis Papathanasiou. I'm a journalist with the Greek Public Television, and I'm glad to be part of this panel with three significant figures of the Greek diaspora, talking about the future of the Greek diaspora in the United States and Canada. Next to me is Mike Manatos, one of the great leaders in Washington and president of the lobbying firm Manatos and Manatos. I know Mike 30 years back. Mike, thank you for being here with us. Next to him is John Sotos, is co-president of Hellenic Initiative in Canada, one of the greatest leaders in Canada. Thank you, Mr. Sotos, for being with us. And next to him is Mr. Jimmy Kokotas. Jimmy Kokotas is the Supreme President of AHEPA, the largest Greek-American organization. They play a big role in Washington. He is one of our greatest in Washington. Thank you, Jimmy, for being with us. We'll start with, I'm going to ask the three gentlemen to make a self-presentation, a short presentation of 2 minutes, how they are engaged with the diaspora in the United States and Canada. Mike, let's start with you.
Fine, thank you very much. Thank you to the many friends who stayed after that last full room, so we at least have some people in the crowd. Appreciate that very much. My family has been blessed for 3 generations and 86 years to be in Washington promoting Hellenism and Orthodoxy. In that capacity, we not only worked with the United States government, but also have gotten to work with Greek-American leaders across the country. And as a result, I serve on the boards of several of the largest Greek-American organizations. So that's really how I'm participating today. I'm on the executive board of Leadership 100, which is over 1,200 of the most prominent Greeks across the country. I'm on the Archdiocesan Council, the lay organization of the Greek Orthodox Church, the 500 Greek Orthodox churches across the country. I'm a member of the Archons, the Ecumenical Patriarchate, a group of 700 Greek Americans, prominent Greek Americans across the country, other organizations like the National Hellenic Society as well. So it's in that capacity that we've been promoting Greece and working very hard, but also looking to the next generation. I look forward to talking more about that in the discussion.
Okay. Mr. Sotos, John Sotos of the Hellenic Initiative in Canada.
Yes, thank you, Fanis. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for staying this late in the day. I've been involved in either leading or founding Greek community organizations in Canada for probably the last 4 decades. I was one of the founders of more of a lobby group called the Hellenic Canadian Congress that was established in the late 80s. It was designed to promote primarily causes of interest to Greece and to Greek Canadians. About several years later, I was one of the founders of what has become the leading organization in Canada that promotes the maintenance of Greek culture, Greek heritage in Canada, called the Hellenic Heritage Foundation, now in its 25th year since incorporation. We have established 2 programs at 2 major universities, one in Toronto, one at York, and the other one at University of Toronto, teaching both a heavy component of language, but also modern Greek history and contemporary Greece. And in 2017, we joined the Canada joined the Hellenic Initiative by establishing the Canadian branch of the Hellenic Initiative. And as a result, we've been continuing the work that was started by our American friends and also promoted by our Australian friends as well. We support, we basically base philanthropy in Greece tax efficiently, but more importantly, we are engaged in promoting the entrepreneurial engagement of Greeks in Greece. We want Greeks to stay in Greece and to do very well.
Thank you, Jimmy. Jimmy Kokotas now, from the president of AHEPA.
Thank you, Fandi. AHEPA has been around for 100 years. We just celebrated our 100-year anniversary. Oldest and largest Greek-American grassroots service organization. Some of the great things that we are so proud of saying that we've played a part of is the building of the churches and starting of communities in America. For probably 500 of the churches that of the 700 in America, AHEPA's helped build, purchase the property, still play a role in the parish councils. Over 1 million members through the 100 years. Advocacy, not lobbying, don't confuse me and Mike. Advocacy on behalf of Greece, Cyprus, and the Patriarchate. I say advocacy because we're volunteers, and we do it for love of country, and to see what we can do to help. None of us are paid. Even myself as president, I'm not paid either. But again, it's a paying it forward that we've been doing for 100 years. AHEPA Housing has almost 5,000 units of affordable senior living. 100 buildings, almost 5,000 units. We're involved in all the communities. We've donated money to the rebuilding of St. Nicholas, members of Leadership 100, archons of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Wherever there's a need and there's a chapter, we try to be involved in to help. Our benefit and our help is that we are everywhere in the country. So whether it's our advocacy in the Hellenic caucus, there is no member that we cannot approach with somebody from our chapter, whether they're Republican or Democrat. We don't play politics. We don't support one party over the other. We just look to work on the ties of the countries, bringing them closer together and seeing what we could do to get some fruits out of our labor and seeing what we could do to help Greece, Cyprus, and once again, the Ecumenical Patriarchate.
Jimmy, thank you. Mike, let's go back to you. What does the current leadership of the community in the United States look like today?
You know, it's an interesting time. It's a crucial time, frankly, because, you know, I had the honor and pleasure to serve at the feet of some of the pioneers, Andy Athens and people that my father's generation. And if you look at how many Greek Americans devoted their resources and their time to promoting Greece and the national issues, probably 500. Go one generation down to my generation, that 500 is about 50. And then you look at my kids' generation, that's an even smaller number. So really it's up to us to find a way to, first of all, build our generation, but then find a way to engage our kids and help them understand the importance of promoting Greece and Hellenism and Orthodoxy in the United States. So it's a crucial time. You see organizations transitioning from the people who founded it to the next. But again, it's a big drop-off, and so it's a big challenge.
So who is the leaders there? Give us a sense of the leading organization playing a role about Greek issues in Washington right now.
Well, there are a number of important organizations, and I think each has their own special skill set. And, you know, a lot of people say, look, if we could all just get together and be united, we could do so much more. I frankly don't agree with that. I believe that each organization has its special contribution. As long as we stay in our lane, support each other, recognize what we can and can't do, that's really what gets us forward. We're united in cause. We're all promoting the same thing for Greece, Cyprus, and the Ecumenical Patriarchate. There's very little difference. So whether it's AHEPA, whether it's the organizations I work with, whether it's the Hellenic American Leadership Council, all these organizations are out utilizing their relationships to promote Greece in the United States. And so it's really a mix of many different factors. Add to it, there are the prominent Greek Americans who aren't necessarily part of an organization. Perfect example of that is one of the greatest accomplishments for Greece, I would argue, in the last 20 years in Washington was a joint, the Prime Minister Mitsotakis, first time in history, a Greek Prime Minister has been invited to give an address to a joint meeting of Congress. How did that happen? A lot of it was very influential Greek Americans with very influential relationships behind the scenes started to build the blocks to make that happen. And they did it for Greece, not for benefit personally, not for benefit of the organization. So it's those kinds of crucial relationships utilized at an important time that can make a big difference in promoting Greece in Washington.
Mr. Sotos, give us your take as far as Canada and how the current leadership in Canada looks like and what's the role in promoting the Greek issues in Canada?
The Greek community in Canada, the organized Greek community in Canada is a lot newer than in the United States. Most Greeks in Canada arrived after the Second World War, and they were primarily, working class people. They established organizations based on place of origin, and in some larger communities, as in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. Sadly, those organizations, the Place of origin organizations pretty much disappeared. You've got the Spartans, Macedonians, and a few other Cretans, but the rest of them have faded into irrelevance or even from existence. The communities, the larger civic communities as well, have also lost a lot of their fervor and energy. And the church as well, which was the focal organization in the early days, also seems to have become significantly diminished just by church attendance and those kinds of things. What has replaced them are more civic organizations. I mentioned the Hellenic Heritage Foundation, of which I'm proud to have helped found. And as I said, between the two universities, we teach over 250 students every year in various levels of modern Greek, the modern Greek language and literature. 60 to 70% of those in every year are non-Greeks. And we're delighted that we're able to promote our culture and our heritage more broadly. And as I said, most recently, we founded the Canadian branch of the Hellenic Initiative. And we have centers of influence in Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and Calgary, and soon to expand to Vancouver. Our directors are leaders in the various communities or in the various industries. And as a result, we have an informal network of exercising influence that didn't exist previously. And last but not least, last October, with the help of Simeon Somokos and the Delphi Forum, we established the first Toronto Economic Forum that brought Greek business people as well as policymakers to Canada to meet with Canadian counterparts as well as successful members of the business community there. And we are having our second one this year, again in October, and the objective is to make this to continue it as an annual event.
Give us a sense of the numbers of how many people in diaspora in Canada are involved in our issues.
It's hard to define. It's like saying how many Greeks are in Canada. I can't tell you, nobody can tell you. If you look at Statistics Canada, it says there's only 200,000 Greeks. But that only counts people who report themselves as Greek. But if you were born in Canada, you're likely to check off the box that you're Canadian rather than Greek, and so on down the line. The answer is we're heavily engaged, and the most important constituency has been our under 40 crowd. We've got new leaders groups. And they are taking off almost spontaneously. And people are engaged. They're engaged in the work that we do in Greece. They support us. They come and visit. They volunteer at the charities that we support here. So I'm delighted that the young people of Greece have a keen interest in Greece, probably even better and stronger than their parents. The hard task is to proliferate that and to educate more people and to offer opportunities for people to engage with Greece.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, give us your take as far as the future of the Greek Americans and the Hellenism in the United States. Is the current leadership attractive to the youth?
We have to make it attractive to the youth. Is there going to be a third generation Manatos? Is it going to be Manatos, Manatos, and Manatos? How I would love for my daughter.
It's up to them.
How I would love for my daughter to be a maid of Athena and to grow up in the Daughters of Penelope. The different organizations, as Mike said, everybody's got a specialty and everybody should continue doing what they're doing. I would hope that maybe we can get all these organizations to come together because the world is in a very difficult place with technology. I think we're at a crossroads. We just celebrated 100 years, and those 8 great people that we talk about that came up with this idea I think it's now up to us to face one of the challenges that will exist in our future and maybe for the next 100 years, and that will be our children and our grandchildren and how Hellenism will survive. How will our faith survive? How will the language and the culture survive? We need to tackle that together, and I think that's maybe one of the things. No matter who you are, everybody always cares about their children and grandchildren, and I think maybe their children and grandchildren might be enough of a draw in their future, might be enough of a draw to get everybody to put their egos a little bit aside and come and work on a common cause, which is Hellenism surviving, the language surviving, and all of our beautiful traditions being passed along. And the greatest way for these children to feel it is to see it. I think, children seeing their parents, for those of us that have been blessed to work with our parents at some point or another, to see them in action, to see that the work behind the words, not just the words being said, in action, and to see that the passion that people have for their faith, for their culture, and how important Hellenism has been to all of us and to the world. So it's up to us to try to keep that alive and make sure that we're able to pass it along. And it really should be one of the most important things that we say it wherever we go. In America, we don't have to pick. You could be a proud American and a proud Greek. Just like here in Europe, you could say that you're a proud Greek and still be a proud European. Let us not forget and sometimes fall for these statements that we just have to be happy to be American. No, America is what? America is Greeks, Italians, Jews, coming together, bringing the beauty of all their cultures is what America is. America was nothing without all these cultures. So let's not forget who we are and where we come from, and the greatest thing we could do in honoring our past is making sure that we can preserve it.
Yeah. Mike, the church and the Greek Archdiocese has played a big role for the Greek American community, for the diaspora in the United States. I just came from the United States, Washington, and I had some discussions, and some people find that there is no strategy, long-time strategy, as far as the role of the church for the future of the Greek American community. What do you think? Should the Archdiocese play a more active role?
Well, I think that if you look at it, where on a weekly basis is there a celebration of our culture and our faith? It's in church every Sunday. It's still headquartered in 49 of 50 states across the country. There are parishes where people still go to focus on that, and there's no other organization that can say that. So by definition, there is this skeleton across the country of Hellenism and Orthodoxy. And so that, in effect, the Archbishop is the head of that group, and you've got the regional metropolitans. But like I said before, each organization has their special contributions to promoting Hellenism in Washington. So I don't think there necessarily needs to be an anointing as this person is the head of this. And there's even talking about all working together. It's great conceptually, but I remember about 20 years ago now, they created this organization called HALO in Washington. You may have been there during that time. It was during one of the archbishops. HALO stood for Hellenic American Leadership Organization. Worked hard to get the heads of all the different organizations in one room and said, here's how we're going to work together. Here's our mission statement, but let's do this together. 20, 30 minutes later, one of those organizations put out a press release criticizing the organization. This is never going to work, and it fell apart almost instantly. So again, I think the key is uniting in cause and purpose, and perhaps most importantly, is not going after one another. The analogy that we use is we've got the enemy out there, whether it be the destruction of Hellenism or the Turks out there. We're a very limited army with limited ammunition, and we're all firing at the same enemy. Well, the problem is when one of those groups starts to lead forward, the guns go from pointing on the enemy to pointing on our own people because there's a jealousy there and those kinds of things. That's what's destructive. That's what creates a problem for promoting the future of Hellenism and Orthodoxy in the United States. But like I said, the church is something that is throughout the United States, but I think this archbishop is really focused on the future of the faith and seeing that it takes different shapes now. I mean, look at my family. So my family for 3 generations is promoting Orthodoxy and Hellenism in Washington. My kids are 4th generation, 1/4 Greek. So what does Greece and Orthodoxy and Hellenism mean to them? That's what we need to explore. And the churches are at least a mechanism that are there on a weekly basis regionally that can bring people in the community in.
If you compare trailblazers like your father, and now you're trying to have your son to be part of the community and the leadership, how difficult it is.
It's a real challenge.
What was the lessons from your father to you, and how difficult is for
So
you?
I think it
son
changes, as with any organization or any community, it changes by generation and what is the traction point, right? I mean, you know, my father's generation, it was go to a Greek dance and meet a nice Greek girl, and that's how it worked. In my generation, there was more, you know, hesitancy there. With my daughters and my son's generation, it's just not the same traction point. But there are a lot of organizations out there trying to find that. And I like to refer to the pilot light of Hellenism within all that are born into the community. And it's our job to ignite that pilot light and help them better understand. One of the organizations I'm involved with, the Hellenic National Council. It is a group that sends, we studied what the Jewish community does with Birthright Israel. They take kids of the Jewish faith, they take them over to Israel and an intensive study program. Our group has now sent over 500 kids and 100 a year now. It sends them over to Athens, and it's a combination of learning the language, learning the culture, the history, meeting other Greek students, and these kids come back. And part of the criteria is college-age students who have never been or been to Greece once. So these are kids who feel not really that immediate connection. It's amazing to see these kids come back so passionate about their faith. Because it's one thing to tell it, especially if you're telling it to your kids. All of us as parents know that a lot of times your kids zone out. But if they go and they see it and they feel it and they touch it, that ignites that pilot light of Hellenism within them. So I know for my kids, that's a program I'm going to send them to, but there are other ways to engage that generation.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Sotos, how can the next generation of the leadership be attractive to the youth of the diaspora?
What? Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Next generation. In Canada, and then I'm going to come to the United States as well. How can we attract the youth to be part of the diaspora?
That's a great question. We've thought about that a great deal, both through my involvement in the Hellenic Heritage Foundation, founded that organization in 1994. It's got 2 chairs of Hellenic studies at the 2 major universities in Toronto, and we train a very large number of students. And part of what we do is we send them to, we have programs with Greek universities, so they visit Greece to do internships and so on. So that's that's an important part of our engagement. And we, on the Hellenic initiative side, we have youth groups. We have established under 40 groups that are engaged in becoming basically new leaders of the organization. They visit Greece. They're going to be here in June, well, in Athens, for some of the work that the Hellenic Initiative Global is doing. And we're communicating with obviously the groups in the United States, Hellenic Initiative, the Australian one, and the idea is to bring the global diaspora Greeks together to not only to help Greece, but to also help each other by getting to know who they are and what they do.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, I always thought that the Jewish lobby, the diaspora, has helped Israel to be transformed to a modern state in terms of innovation, with a startup nation, economy. How can we, what lessons can we draw from Israel in order to help Greece to modernize the state, the economy, innovation?
Unity for cause. The Conference of Presidents is kind of similar to what you were mentioning. It's the presidents of major American Jewish organizations coming together, sitting at a table, bringing different perspectives. Everybody does different things, as Mike said, and everybody can continue to do their own thing, but seeing where they can work together on certain issues. I think the Jewish community does a very good job of putting their differences aside when it comes to their lobbying efforts and support of Israel. So again, maybe their ego's in check. And we have, many of the Greek American organizations, I think, have taken lessons from the Jewish community and the effectiveness they've had. That's one of the reasons I think a lot of us are in Washington, because that's where a lot of the stuff happens. It's very important to be there close to the game, and the game is played in Washington. So you cannot be advocating or lobbying as Mike and Andy do if you're not there. So you have to be close to it. But again, the putting aside of personal differences and coming together for the greater cause, I think is the greatest lesson. And coming from New York City with a very large Jewish American population, you see that. A lot gets done. And we've probably missed a lot of opportunities because of our hesitancy to have faith in one another at times for the good of the bigger picture. And if I can just touch on the question that you said about the Archdiocese, and I spoke about this at the clergy laity, if you look at statistics, the percentage of people that believed in God, and that is obviously Christian, Jew, and Muslim, was in the 90s, 90-something% when you go back 20, 30 years ago. Now, depending on the polls that you look at, it's in the high 70s. Years ago, people did not identify as much as atheists. Maybe they weren't believers, but now you have people openly, that percentage is growing. So we're kind of trying to reinvent the wheel, because you look what's going on in society and how people are having mental health issues and a lot of other issues. If you look at a lot of major child psychology studies, both psychologists and psychiatrists tell you the one variable that plays a role in a young adult's and young child's life, whether they'll be successful, not successful, whether they'll be able to deal with problems or have depression issues and other issues or anxiety, is hope. Our church provides us with hope. If there's one great thing it gives us, is hope in our lives. No matter what happens in this one, that there's hope for the next one. So these children that grow up without hope, but it's uncool in society today. If somebody went to Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts on Friday night, spent Saturday with their family, and went to see a Yom Kippur on Sunday, and they told their friends that they did that at 16 or 17 years old, somebody would probably say to them, that's what you did this weekend. So society has kind of turned things upside down on us, and I don't think we should give in. We should not give in. We should remind our children, let's go to Socrates, and to think for ourselves and not be scared to challenge convention, because the convention a lot of people are selling us might be convention to them, but it's not the convention that's led to our success as Greeks or Greek Americans, and it's definitely not the success that's led to the success that's been attained by a large portion of the people of the world, who are persons of faith. And I don't want to be a holy roller here, but if you're trying to teach ethics in school, but you don't do it because it's too similar to the Ten Commandments and you don't want to go down that path, how can you possibly teach ethics? Yeah. So it's very difficult to get out of this cycle that has been created, and the children and the youth are paying a price for that.
Mm-hmm. Mike, during the COVID era, what came up is that the high level of the Greek scientists in the United States, but all over the world, how can we take advantage of the diaspora and the same question, and help Greece and Cyprus to modernize the state and to innovate the economy?
I think that's a vastly untapped resource, because the organizations that I'm involved with that you mentioned are successful, primarily business leaders, right? But we've got all these scientists and professors and others who are spread throughout the United States, some with not Greek-sounding names, but they're out there and are on some level proud of their connection with Greece. What we really need is the resources to try to dig those folks out, to find a serious way to get them involved. I think that's another essential element. But this also can add to the future too, right? I mean, when my kids found out that the CEO of Pfizer was a Greek Jew, they're very proud of that. That's something that's kind of cool of that generation, that there's this successful person that everyone knows the name of in the world, and that person has a Greek heritage. But I think that is just a matter of resources, frankly. We've got such limited resources that are devoted towards strengthening Hellenism in the United States, at least, that's an overlooked area.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Sotos, do you think an effort, an initiative for a unity in order to organize the leaderships the organizations of the diaspora should come from Athens and Nicosia or from abroad?
My view is that Athens should facilitate, but Athens should not lead. Athens is really not in touch with the existence of the diaspora Greeks in any meaningful way. So it definitely has to come from abroad. My view is that Greece can play a role in facilitating, but it should be the organizations, the outside organizations, that should define what it is that they're looking for in terms of getting together. Greece can facilitate by hosting conferences, think tanks, those kinds of things that take place in Greece that bring people together. But since before the Hellenic Initiative was founded, there really wasn't a civic organization anywhere that brought Greeks in leadership roles from abroad together. It has done that now throughout North America, Australia, UK, and there's more opportunity to grow. So I think the leadership has to come from outside as opposed to top down, because that doesn't, and it's been tried before, by the way, and it has failed.
Mm-hmm. We have approximately 3 minutes. We're gonna try to finish with an optimistic line. A recent phenomenon during the COVID era was like a lot of Greeks from abroad, scientists, business entrepreneurs, came to Greece and rediscovered Greece during the COVID era and came to work from the villages, islands. I would like your take on this and how this can be help to create a new dynamic for the future of the diaspora.
I think just as with our youth, there's no better way to engage anyone with any percentage of Hellenism in them than to bring them to this country and have them meet the people, see the beauty of the country. And I think there's a certain physical connection. As I'm flying and I see Greece for the first time, it really touches me in a way that nowhere else in the world does. And that's because of my heritage. So I think the more that we can bring those folks over, but of course, again, they get that feeling, they come back. How do you sustain that? How do you get them involved to then take it to the next level and help get engaged in promoting? That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Sotos?
Well, diaspora mobilization can play a leading role in helping Greece achieve some of its objectives, foreign policy and otherwise. But even in terms of providing know-how, there's a tremendous amount of experience abroad, and Greece hasn't tapped into that. Our objective as the Hellenic Initiative is to have Greeks stay in Greece and do very well. We don't want them immigrating. They can come abroad for 6 months or a year to get some training, but we want them to come back and create jobs here and be successful here and help this country grow, because at the end of the day, this is our base.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy?
Well, I think there's a lot of positive that we could bring up. There's been a lot of positive that's happened the last couple of years. As the Greeks say, they go from crisis to crisis to crisis. But the Prime Minister being invited to speak at the joint sessions of Congress, the underlying work at a business level that's been done here to attract business, to attract corporations, Google, Microsoft, Pfizer, data centers, energy, Alexandroupolis. There's so much here. I think it needs a little bit more time, and probably the crisis, the COVID pandemic slowed things down even more. But Greece is definitely on a good trajectory. It might be slow for some people, and it hasn't benefited everybody yet, and inflation has hit everybody this last couple of years, especially this past year. So we're all feeling it. But in the end, you have to have faith in what's going on and faith in your country. And people here should have a little bit of faith in what's been done. Not everybody's felt it yet, but it will be felt pretty soon, I believe. So I think keeping on that trajectory, I think the country's been elevated by the stance in Ukraine, by the aid through Alexandroupoli, a stable partner. I don't think Greece, and I know the panel before this was the one talking about it with the 3+1, Greece has never been, I think, held in this kind of regard. For its history, yes. For its current position and current work, no. And right now, that work of stability, of aid, of expansion, of planting the seeds of technology, which I don't think were ever planted before, not at this level. There's a lot to look forward to, and we're proud as Greeks to see that back home in America.
Nice. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much, everybody, for your attention. Continue our program. Thank you.
Thank you.